Hello, dear friends, and welcome back to my channel and welcome to my kitchen. Happy St. Patrick's Day. If your stores are like the stores in my area, you can get a really good deal on corned beef at this time of year. I found this corned beef brisket point cut for $1.99 a pound. I bought nearly 13 pounds, and I'm going to do a whole canner load. Now, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to drain the liquid off that this came marinating in, and I'm going to discard it. Even though the package instructions tell you to save it, I'm not going to, because we're going to be canning this, and it's going to have plenty of flavor already marinated into the meat. So I'm going to rinse the extra spices off. I'm trying to get a little bit of the saltiness out of the dish, so I'm going to rinse the roasts in water, changing the water a couple of times for about 15-20 minutes. I'm going to just rinse these to try and remove some of the saltiness. And we're going to do a whole canner load of corned beef with this 13 pounds. We're going to be serving it up with cabbage, and I have some colcannon that I made last fall that I'm going to serve this with for dinner. So can't wait. Looks really good. This meat is nice and lean. I'm going to just flip it here a few times, keep rinsing, keep draining the water. So we're going to get this full and let this soak for, like I said, about 15 or 20 minutes, and then we'll come back. Now, the jars we're going to use, I'm going to use 1 quart jar, but mostly I'm going to be using these 1.5 jars. They hold 3 cups, and they're similar size for the lid. They both use the wide mouth lids. The quart jar holds an extra cup more than the 1.5 jar. And I'm going to be able to fit, hopefully, 8 jars in my canner. I know my canner for sure will accept 7 quart jars. Okay, so we've got the meat is pretty well rinsed. It's been soaking. We're going to take it out and get it cut up into smaller chunks. Alrighty, the meat has been soaking for about 15-20 minutes. We're going to take it out and get it cubed up. So over to the cutting board we go. I'm going to slice it one direction in about 1-inch slices. And there it is. And now we're going to cut it the other direction. And if necessary, we'll cut those slices here even smaller if we need to. We're going to be removing the fat, the large amounts of fat. This is well marbled meat, so we don't need to leave extra fat on there. So I'm going to just take a minute to remove the big hunks of fat. But mostly this is a nice lean corned beef. I'm really pleased. So here we've got it cubed up. I've got the fat separated out to the side. We're going to get our jars filled with this beautiful lean corned beef. Alrighty, we've got our 8 jars full. We're leaving 1 inch of headspace, or about 1.25 inches of headspace. Well, we filled our 8 jars pretty nicely full. It worked out just right. I did add a little bit of water. You don't have to, and it's probably not advisable to add extra water, but I did. I don't want to have product that's above the water line when I'm storing it on the shelf, but you certainly do not have to. And the next thing we're going to do is get a little towel or cloth, dip it in a little vinegar to kind of cut the grease in case some fat is on the edge of the rim. And we're going to clean each and every rim. We're going to check for any nicks or cracks that might be on the edge of the jar at the same time, because that'll prevent your jar from sealing. And we're going to make sure the rims are clean. The area where the rings screw on is nice and clean. And then we'll be able to get the lids on and get these into the canner. Okay, we're going to get our lids on each jar. Kind of center it as best you can. Get the ring on there nicely. We want to screw these down fingertip tight. Not too tight. If your lids are on too tight, your jar could break or crack. So into the canner they go. I don't need my jar lifter because everything is cold at this point. The water in the canner is cold. The meat product is room temperature. So we're going to get these all into the canner and start the processing. Wasn't that easy? All you have to do is cut it up and load your jars. Can't get any simpler than that. Okay, so the canner, as I said, is room temperature or cool. We're going to turn this on heat, but not very high. We don't want to do any sudden quick temperature changes when we're canning. We just want to bring this up to temperature slowly. So kind of a medium to high heat. We'll put the lid on the canner. On this particular canner, I need to line up the arrows on the lid and the handle, slide the handle into place to lock the lid in place. And now we're going to wait. We've got the heat on. We're going to wait till we see a plume of steam coming through this vent. And it's going to have to steam like a locomotive engine for about 10 minutes. So here we go. There's a nice plume of steam. We're going to set our timer for 10 minutes. And at that time, we'll put the weight on. The 10 minutes is up. I'm going to put the 10-pound weight, which is what I need for my elevation. And about 15-20 minutes has elapsed. I didn't look at the clock to see the exact time. And now the weight is starting to rock. So that indicates that we have 10 pounds of pressure in our canner, and we're going to start timing for 90 minutes because we have quart-sized jars. So I'm going to set my timer for 90 minutes. I'm going to turn the heat down a little bit more. Like I said, we don't want any sudden temperature changes. Our 90 minutes has finished. We're going to turn the heat off under our canner. We're going to allow this to come down to pressure naturally, or depressurize, I should say. And first thing that you're going to see is the rocker will stop rocking. So you don't want to touch this. You don't want to take anything off. You don't want to remove it from the stove. We're just going to let it depressurize naturally. It takes about an hour. And now you can see the pin has dropped. It's been about an hour since we turned the heat off. I'm going to now remove my weight. And we can crack the canner open a little bit just to let some of the steam out. But we still don't want to remove the lid just yet. We're going to wait for 5-10 minutes. So I'm just going to sort of prop the lid up just a little bit here. Let a little bit of the heat out. And now we've waited about 5 or 10 minutes. So we're going to go ahead and remove the lid and get our jars out. So here we have 8 lovely jars. They look pretty good. We're going to have to use the jar lifter, obviously, because they're warm or very hot. And we want to just lift them straight out, put them on an insulated surface. I've got a cutting board with a cloth on top of it. We can see the corned beef bubbling in the jar there. That's what you want to see. That's normal. The liquid at this point in time is at the bottom of the jar, but as the jars cool overnight, the liquid will settle, the corned beef rather, will settle to the bottom, and the liquid will rise to the top of the jar. So everything looks really good. I'm really pleased with this. I see a little bit of siphonage, a little bit of fatty material in the water in the canner, but not much. So hopefully all our jars will seal nicely and there won't be any issue with that. Sometimes if you have siphonage, your jars won't seal properly. So we're going to wait. We're going to leave these out on the countertop for 12 hours at least until they're nice and cool. And then at that time, we'll remove the rings. We'll test our seals, make sure all the lids are properly sealed. And at that time, we'll get everything cleaned up, mark our jars. So we'll be back in the morning. These look so good. I'm really happy with how they turned out. Every jar is bubbling. Now that's a good sign. That means we likely have a good seal on our jars, or we're going to have a good seal. I found that if the jars don't seal, you won't see that bubbling. And see, I've got a little bit of grease in the canner, not too much. So I think this was a good session. Awesome. Okay, here we are back in the morning. All our jars are looking good. We're going to remove the rings and get them washed up because they have a little bit of grease on them from the canning process. We had a little bit of siphonage, so we want to get the rings washed up as quickly as possible and get them dried and put away. Okay, everything's looking good. Now I'm going to check and see if they're sealed. Everything sounds kind of dull when you thump it. You can pick each jar up by the lid. If your jar is not going to seal, you won't be able to pick it up like this. You'll try to pick it up and the lid will just come right off. And if that happens, you just put whatever it is that you canned right into the refrigerator and you can, eat it within a day or two. You don't have to, it doesn't go to waste. But I'm very pleased to see that all these jars sealed up perfectly nicely. Awesome. Good canning session. Okay, I'm going to get the rest of my rings and get them into the soapy water. We'll get these washed up and dried. We're going to also wash each jar. It's a little hard to do this with one hand. I'm going to use some soapy water, wash them thoroughly, get them rinsed off, get them, there we go. Going to get this jar dried off. And once it's nice and dry, we're going to get a Sharpie marker. You can see the Sharpie marker here. And we're going to write on the lid the product and the date that we canned it. And I have a little system that I use to remind myself of what process I used for canning. I have abbreviations. I put WB for water bath and PC for pressure can, and then I add the number of minutes that I processed the can for. So this is going to be PC 90 minutes. That way, if I look a year from now into the cabinet and wonder what I did, I won't have to guess. I'll know that I pressure canned this for 90 minutes. So now we're going to get ready to make our St. Patrick's Day dinner. I've got a quart of our delicious corned beef that we canned yesterday, and we've got some colcannon that I canned last September. This is a Irish potato dish that's got leeks and sometimes they put cabbage in there. I've got a little bit of bacon, and my daughter-in-law told me it was great. She had a can of this. I haven't tried it myself yet. So here we have a side dish of cabbage ready to cook. I've got a few potatoes and an onion in there. But I think with the colcannon, I may not even need the extra potatoes. So let's get the corned beef into a pan. We're going to just warm it up in the liquid that it was canned in. Look how nice that looks. Beautiful. I love the bright color of corned beef. So we're going to get that on the stove, get it covered, let it warm up for 5-10 minutes. There's our cabbage waiting to come to a boil. Now we're going to open the colcannon and get that warmed up as well. So this was canned. I used chicken broth to can this. So I'm going to warm it up in the chicken broth that I canned it in. And once this is thoroughly warmed up, we are going to drain the chicken broth off, and then we're going to mash the potatoes and add a little butter and cream, and it's going to be a delicious side dish for our corned beef. So we're going to get lids on everything while they're warming, and it's going to just take 5-10 minutes, as I said, for everything to get warmed up. So dinner will be ready before we know it. Another great thing I love about canned food, everything comes together so quickly. Alrighty, our potatoes or colcannon is ready to mash. It smells so delicious. Look at that. You know, it didn't look too great in the jar, but now that you're seeing it on the stovetop, it looks really wonderful. So I drained out the broth, and I'm going to just mash these potatoes like this. Get our regular hand masher. We're going to just add a little bit of butter and cream. I'm not even going to add salt because there's already bacon in this, so that's going to add a little bit of salt to the dish. Wow, this smells so good. Okay, here's a little bit of cream. It would have been good if I would have warmed this up, but I just am using it right out of the fridge. And then we're going to mix it up, let it get nice and creamy. I'm going to get some butter to add to this. It is going to be delicious. Delicious, I say. Wow, look at that. Wonderful. There's our butter. So I think we're just about ready to get our dinner plated up. That smells so good. Our cabbage is about ready. I think we'll start with the corned beef first on the plate. So I'll get my spider skimmer. There we go. Oh, wow. Look at that. Delicious, perfectly done corned beef. It always amazes me that when you can your food, it's ready so quickly. I mean, it's just tenderized. If you were to slow cook corned beef, it would take all day. And even then, sometimes it's a little bit tough, even at the end of the day. But I find when I can the food, the extra little bit of pressure used in the processing really tenderizes the meat so nicely. So there's a little bit of cabbage, a little wedge of cabbage. We'll add our colcannon. And this is ready to go. Just delicious. And so quick and easy. A little advanced preparation, and there we have it. Yum. Dinner is served. And I'd like to show you, I'm going to get a fork and show you just how tender this beef is. Look at there. I mean, just fall apart tender. Amazing. So please like this video, subscribe, and we'll talk to you again soon. Bye.